Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to this webinar regarding orchestrating your company's forces to deal with delays and changes on a construction project.
Evening, everyone.
One second. Um, Orchestrating your in house staff and the various departments therein, as well as your field people and the roles they play, is not only necessary, but it is a vital to protect your company's interests. My name is Stephen Berkowitz. I'm the president of a law firm, Berkowitz and Associates. We represent parties on construction projects, and we also work with and support the Moment Group as they advise and represent various parties on construction projects. Uh, a little bit about my background so you know with whom you're speaking, or at least who is speaking right now. Uh, my undergraduate is in mechanical engineering. I have a Bachelor of Science in mechanical engineering. After I graduated from engineering school, I began to work for a Fortune 100 company where I consulted and designed and sold automation systems in construction projects. I worked there for 11 years. During the last 4 years, I went to law school at night and I began this practice solely focused on construction and construction related issues. A little bit about the webcast. Um, I will be happy to take questions during the presentation. If you'd like to chat, you can just type into the box on the screen, as some of you have already started doing, and I can answer your questions, or the Moment Group will also be here with me, and if you have questions for them, we'll all try to respond to your questions in a satisfactory manner. Um, You could also, if you have questions after the webinar, my email address is on the bottom of the slides, and you can feel free to email me. I'll be happy to email you back. If you lose my email address, you can always just Google me at Steve Berkowitz, construction attorney, and I'm sure I'll pop right up there. So, getting on to the topic. In any construction project, it's vital if you're going to prepare for a delay claim that the field has to communicate with your office administration. Office administration must communicate with accounting. Everyone must communicate with management, and management must communicate with everybody and play a role leading the company into presenting the claim if necessary. Um, our goal here is to create for your company a position of strength so that you may establish your entitlement to the claim or whatever it is that you are looking to do, which is going to maximize your company's benefit on the project. The stronger you can support your claim, the less expense you're going to endure um, in bringing it and in getting what you need out of your claim. Basically, whenever anybody goes to work in any project, in almost any vocation, we all have the same goal. Um, we all want to make more money with less stress. Following the tips that I present in this first of five five month webinar will help you reduce your stress and will allow your company to get the entitlement that they are looking for. Okay, this I said this is a multi-part series. We're going to learn some key concepts, and those concepts, as you might have seen in the email, are orchestrating your forces, uh, which is what this webinar is about. The documentation that you will need will be the next webinar. We'll then talk about critical path and evaluating your claims. Finally, after we talk about these concepts, the last webinar we will apply what you've learned to a actual example, and we can see how it all works. But of course, it's first important that we understand the key concepts. It's much like I've journeyed through my career, in that I learned from the field, from being involved in the construction in the field. I went to law school and learned about the law, and I applied it. In the last 17 years, I've been working um, solely in construction and also supporting the Moment Group. Uh, we have a unique philosophy, and I'll tell you where it comes from. Basically, our philosophy is that we want to tell our clients not what they can't do, but how they can do what they want to do. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was working in construction, my a manager was having a horrible shouting match on the telephone one day, and uh, he slammed the phone down. And I said, Joe, what's wrong? He said, Steve, I am sick of these attorneys telling me what I can't do. I want an attorney that will tell me what I can do. That is where I basically got the credo under which I run my firm, which is I will not tell a client what he can't do unless I have a solution to explain how he can do what he wants to. He may not be able to do it the way, or she may not be able to do it the way they want to do it, but we're going to find a way that you can get it done. You got to bear with me with these slides. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will. Uh, that's a poem that I often think of in construction projects. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It goes, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, when you want to smile but you have to sigh, when things are getting you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Things go wrong in construction projects. Not every construction project, but if you do more than one construction project, inevitably you will run into a situation where things go wrong. So, what do we do when things go wrong? Well, as I said, we're going to orchestrate our forces. And what does that mean? Well, the first thing we have to do to orchestrate the forces is to have the field people and all the forces really understand what the cause of the delay is. Uh, it's important to categorize the causes of delay, and we'll talk about the reasons for that a little bit more later. The first category of delays are owner-caused delays. Um, some examples are limitations of site access, um, inability to get government approvals, such as permits and things like that, inadequate financing when the cash doesn't flow. Many of the states have laws which permit the contractors to stop work without penalty of breach of contract if they're not getting paid, and that's only fair because nobody should have to go to work and expend resources on a project that's going to benefit another if they are not being paid for it. So, inadequate financing, that's another owner caused delays. Now, these seem rather obvious, but it's important to categorize the things. Improper contract administration, and that's, I'm talking about on behalf of the owner. Uh, we'll talk about contract administration on behalf of the design engineer, but that's another cause of delay: improper contract administration. Changes in scope. Now, owners often are going to change scopes because they want different things to in the project. They want to change the project in various ways, and those are a few owner caused delays. Now, there are also designer caused delays. And it's important to differentiate these because, as I said, we're going to create a claim here, and you want to have your documentation correct, and you want to make sure that when you present your claim, you look for the entitlement from the appropriate party. So some designer caused delays are a slow response to RFIs. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. You can't get an answer to a question and you can't proceed. Well, if the thing you can't proceed with is on the critical path, that will slow, if not stop, the project until you can get the response. It's important that when you are addressing that delay and addressing the entitlement, that you're looking to the right party. It's also important that your field personnel, your in-house contract administrators, your various parties know who is responsible for the potential delays. Another design defects, those we're, I'm sure, all familiar with those. And usually the natural progression of design defects are excessive RFIs. All of that, constantly changing designs, those are delays caused by the designer, and they should be addressed as such. Now, I presume the majority of the people on the call are contractors. Um, and there are, of course, contractor delays. And it's important that when you're establishing your position, you don't try to blame the owner for something that is the contractor's fault. We'll talk about establishing position and how important it is to have a cogent, defendable position. So, from the contractor, there could be management problems, and that has to do with what resources are being expended and directed at what portion of the project. There are situations where there are inadequate resources, and I'm sure that the owner will document those with correspondences asking for more men on the project, and that would also be a contractor caused delay. Now, we don't want to ask the owner for compensation for these sort of things because it's basically going to weaken our position. And finally, there's subcontractor failure. Sometimes your subcontractors don't do what you need them to do, and obviously that's something you have to bite the bullet for. We can't ask the owner or the designer to compensate us for that. Now let's look at the various departments. Now these various departments, they don't necessarily need to be actual departments full of people. They can be, um, oops, they can be a single person, or it can be just an individual, or one individual, may be all of the departments. Um, First department is management. Uh, what's management's role in the contract claim process? Um, Management's role is to develop a claim avoidance plan. What does that mean? Uh, in order to develop a claim avoidance plan, I'm going to list a few activities that management should set up procedures so that these things can be accomplished. First is a contract clause review. First thing that we need to do is we have to look at the contract clauses, and we have to make sure that they're clean clauses that we can adhere to. That there is a if there is a form for claims per the specification, you know who to submit them to. These things seem rather obvious, but it's very important that you comply with the contract. We don't necessarily want to go to court, but we want to establish a strong position, and the best way to do that is to show that if you have to go to court, you're going to have a very solid position. I'm sure everyone's heard the phrase, the best defense is a good offense. If you can make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, so to say, that you're following the contract, that you're submitting your claims in a timely manner, you're going to be able to avoid having to defend your position in court or bring your claim to court. A thorough scope definition. Make sure that everybody on your team knows what they're supposed to do, and they don't do additional work. Now, this does come up more often than you would think. I've had ceiling contractors, waterproofing contractors perform work well above their scope, and then the problem is that if you haven't been documenting it properly and you haven't followed the proper procedures, you might not be able to get compensated for it. So for those reasons, it's very important that you have a thorough scope definition. A document control process is imperative. You have to have a specific procedure for your RFIs, for your change orders, for your scheduling, for your bills. The document control process is critical. Constructability reviews. There is make sure that what you're going to build is actually, in your opinion, going to work. Now, you're not responsible to design the project, but the earlier that you can bring these sort of issues, such as constructability or whether or not this is going to work, the sooner you can bring this to the owner's attention, the better off you're going to be. Now, I had a colleague once, before I was an attorney. I was studying to be an attorney, and he said, "Steve, why do your attorneys always put everything in writing? You seem to get yourselves in trouble." And the reason that not just attorneys, contractors, a lot of people should put things in writing is to prove that you said what you said when you said it. Now, in the law, they give special credibility for contemporaneous documents. That's a document that was written when it's dated or when it's purported to be written. If somebody's asked a question, "What were you doing a year ago?" and they give you an answer, that answer is automatically subject to scrutiny. How does he remember what he was doing a year ago? How are we sure that he didn't make a mistake and is thinking of the wrong day? However, if you have a document that is dated a year ago, and all you have to do is say, "I know I wrote that document a year ago because I remember writing that document a year ago," that document has special credibility. Now, if you are going to alert the owner or the designer to the fact that you think that there may be a problem in the constructability of this project, you want to have a document that you can know exactly what you told him, and you know exactly when you told it to him. These things are all going to make you a stronger claimant, a stronger adversary if it gets adversarial, a stronger position for your entitlement. A thorough site investigation, I'm sure we're all familiar with that, is you should do it. But of course, you also not only investigate the site, but again, the contemporaneous documentation. You want to make an activity report, and you know, so that you can document what you found. Um, Effective change order control management. Again, got to go to the contract. Make sure you know the notice provisions. All of these things, a lot of people, a lot of contractors look at all of these things after the project is over and say, "Oh, look at this. I had to give them 21-day notice." And what do you know? The owner chopped that 21-day notice down to a 5-day notice, as I've often seen the AIA documents. But that is knowing how to issue the change orders, who they have to go to, who has to sign off on them. All these things are very important for you to establish your entitlement. Um, Effective risk management and secondary mediation plans. Management should be aware when a project is going south, and there's got to be a plan of how you're going to deal with that. It could be notifying the owner. It could be uh, changing the way things are being done. But it's important that you keep tabs on that. Implementation of effective alternate dispute resolution processes. By the way, I'm reading off of notes, as I'm sure you can tell, and I'll be happy to share those notes with anybody on this webinar. If they want to email me after the webinar, I'll send them right over to you. Anyway, um, implementation of effective alternate dispute resolution process. This can be a tremendous advantage. It's basically like a prenuptial agreement. It's how are you going to deal with a problem um, before it comes up and while where everybody's happy, just like everybody's happy when they sign the prenuptial agreement. But its purpose of signing that is to deal with things when people aren't so happy, and that's the same thing with a alternative dispute resolution plan. Maybe you want to make sure that if there is a dispute, if we have a claim, that the parties are going to meet and set forth a procedure by which the parties will meet, and how many times they're going to meet, who's going to be at the meeting, and so on and so forth. Um, and that's basically the management's role is to have input and make sure these processes are put in place. Um, Now, the second department is your in-house contract administration. These are the people who are going to be creating your paper trail. They're going to be keeping the documents. The guys in the field don't always have time to write the letters that need to be written so that you can prove, to create that contemporaneous documentation, that all important contemporaneous documentation. So obviously your field people have to be communicating with your in-house contract administration. In-house contract administration also should be reviewing the contract for procedures, making sure that you're complying with the notice requirements. They can be drafting the RFIs and the change orders, and I'm sure you're familiar with all those activities, but that's what they can be doing. Now, when I say they should be reviewing the contracts, what is the in-house contract administration reviewing the contract for? Well, obviously you have your time clauses. Your time is of the essence. Your commencement date, your completion date, your substantial completion date. All these dates are obviously very important, and it's your in-house contract administration people, which could be you, who is makes sure that everyone is aware of the notice provisions, the scheduling provisions and scheduling requirements. Um, those are something else that you've the contract requires that you provide a schedule monthly and you update the schedule monthly. You're in a much better position to establish your entitlement if you have complied with that, other instead of giving the other side the ammunition to say, "Well, look, here there were supposed to be schedule updates monthly. there's one schedule update in the whole project, and they're now asking for compensation. Well, it's you're starting off with one foot in the hole already. We talked about the change order clauses and the differing site conditions. All these clauses are things that you should really, when you review a contract, this is what you're really looking for. Because let's face it, your biggest claim on a project could be attributable to a delay. The biggest part of the project could be the change orders. You should really review these clauses on every project. Obviously, we have the always popular liquidated damages clause, which is important to keep mind of, and you have your no delay for damage. Excuse me, your no damage for delay clause. Now, in all the states have different ways that the legislation has addressed that. Some states have called them no damage for delay clauses contrary to public policy. It's contrary to the public interest, who is paying for the project in some cases, to have contractors not be able to be compensated for delays. The way I explain it to a jury is, if you're making, $10,000 for 1 year of work, and all of a sudden you get paid the same $10,000 salary, but now you have to perform 2 years of work, basically your salary has been cut in half. Well, that's basically what happens to a contractor when he has to perform a 1 year project over 2 years. There was a certain amount of profit that was going to be made on that project that is not realized, and contractors may be entitled to compensation as long as he can explain what delayed him and what his damages are and who is responsible for those damages. If you can't do that, it's going to be much more difficult to get paid, and you're going to have to involve other parties. We're happy to help the Moment Group and myself and my firm, but in order to make your company more efficient, if you can answer those questions, you'll be in a much better position to negotiate a settlement. The third department is your accounting department. These people are responsible, obviously, for your bills, but another thing that they are responsible for is basically creating a picture of the progress on the project. Your accounting, your schedule of values, your progress billing is going to set forth a sequence of the time and the work that was performed, and that sequence is going to be submitted in the form of the bill. The owner and the architect and the design professionals are going to review that bill, and although there's going to be, I'm sure, in many contracts, a clause that says just because we paid for something doesn't necessarily mean we agree with the way it was done, it is evidence of the progress of the project, and accounting is responsible for that. So besides getting paid, a good communication between your field people and your accounting department is going to facilitate a accurate record of the project. Your field personnel, obviously, we talked about they're the eyes and ears. And they're the men on the ground, and they're producing documentation. They're identifying changes. They're identifying delays. We spoke about this earlier. Finally, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't keep up with my slide. Field personnel, schedulers. Now, a scheduler, it could be an in-house scheduler. I know plenty of contractors, big contractors, that have one of the owners. they like doing the scheduling. It's a it's an art form. And so, as I said, the schedulers could be in-house. It could be a third party. I don't want to make any advertisements here, but um, the Moment Group, I can do some scheduling. There are a lot of third-party schedulers out there. Obviously, they're an important part of the project, and it's sometimes assigning that duty to a third party can help concentrate on that aspect of the project should it become necessary. Um, if you believe that there is a delay or there could be a delay, or if you see constructability problems or anything like that, good to have various people paying attention to various their individual portions of the project. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So in the end, one company, one party is going to be asking for money to be paid to them, and the other party is going to be trying to avoid that money being paid. As I said before, your best way to for you to establish your position, to establish your strength, to establish your entitlement is to have your ducks in a row. Know your contract. Make sure that all the departments are working together. Uh, an analogy I often use is some of my clients can relate to a bar fight, where when there's a person in a bar and there's an adversarial situation coming up, two sides they're sizing each other up. Nobody wants to get in a fight with the biggest guy in the bar. Um, so in that situation, being having size and strength can avoid an altercation. Well, it's the same thing when you're in a construction project. I'm not suggesting that there should be any actual physical fighting, but the way on a construction project, a construction professional establishes size and strength is through being well documented, having the contemporaneous documentation to prove he said what he said when he said it. If he has his people looking at the right things, identifying problems early, documenting the problems, your negotiations are going to go a lot smoother. Just like the big guy in the bar, he's not going to have a lot of people who want to really mess with him because of his size. Your company being well documented, having all the parties working together, you're going to avoid an altercation, and you're going to be able to get achieve entitlement, and things will work a lot smoother for your company in the long run. And that's why it's worth it to do these things. So this has been the first part in a 5-part series. Um, Next month we'll be talking about the documentation that we need, and as I said, you can email me. You can. I haven't seen any questions on the chat. If anybody wants to ask a question, you can feel free to do that at this time. Um, if not, I'll be looking forward to speaking to you next month when we talk about documentation that you will need. I thank you very much for listening and for participating in this webinar. Have a good evening.